All right. Melanie, are we ready to get started? Thanks for joining. So welcome everybody to Finance 334. We'll now get started. Sorry for that break there at the beginning. I was actually speaking into a muted line. All this election buzz has got me a little bit flustered tonight. But welcome to this Election Tuesday. Hopefully by the time we get done tonight with this class, you'll probably know who the next president will be based on poll results coming in. So anyway, a couple objectives tonight. We want to review basically where we've been a little bit. We want to talk about what we have left to do, which is not much. We're in the final week. And then we want to talk about some slides from Chapter 17, the topic of retirement, mostly the topic of retirement, but there is some other, side ancillary topics when it comes to employee benefits as well within the slides tonight. And then finally, spend most of our time, as I mentioned before, Melanie, on the final test. The final test is larger than the other tests have been, and it's worth a lot more points, and it's also comprehensive and has some repeat questions from previous weeks. So we will spend, though, a good chunk of time at the end of class tonight making sure to review that information. Melanie, before we get started, any questions from you or concerns that you have before we get started? Can you use the chat box to just confirm? Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay? So thank you. So thank you for being here tonight too. Like I say, it's a busy night with being an election day and a pretty historic election day, right? We are very close to having potentially a first female president of the United States. So that's a big deal. Whether or not you are in support of her or not, that's historic. That's a historic thing. So anyway, a couple things. First of all, we want to talk a little bit about assignments to this point. I'm still missing quite a few assignments. I think many of you look at the assignments and become kind of overwhelmed by the assignments, especially week 2. And just as a reminder, in case you haven't listened to any of the other sessions to this point, during week 2 and week 3, during the sessions, we talked about how to set those problems up. We also looked at slides that gave examples of how to set those problems up, and I also encouraged you to look at the chapter wherein they also give an example of how to set those problems up as far as finding the cost of insurance using those 3 different methods from the assignment in week 2. But it is, there is some math associated with it. There is an equation. There are steps that have to be followed. And so if you found yourself kind of feeling discouraged or overwhelmed by that, be sure to review the sessions, be sure to review the book, and reach out to me if you've got something specific that's catching you or holding you back with those. But please wait to reach out to the learning coach, Lindsay Haas, or myself until after you've reviewed the slides, reviewed the sessions, and reviewed the chapter. That's kind of a minimum expectation for us when you come to get help on the assignments that you've at least reviewed the material, right? We're happy to help, but one of the expectations that we have for you all is that you're reading and that you're reviewing the information and reviewing the sessions. So I think if you'll do that, you'll find that there's material that will really help you, when it comes to those assignments, especially assignment 2. Okay, and as far as this week is concerned, of course, we don't have an assignment. We also don't have a discussion board. To this point, this class has been phenomenal on the discussion board. So thank you for that. I thought we had some very good discussions, that you guys between each other had some very good discussions. And I'm hopeful that you will continue, being mentors to each other, peers to each other, and helpful to each other in discussing different topics going forward within this class, but perhaps more importantly in classes to come. That's a good opportunity to meet people, kind of get to know them, interact with them, and then recognize them when you're in future classes together as well, and you guys can help each other and support each other that way. If, though, you find yourself missing a few posts, get them in, get them done. You've got until this Saturday at midnight to still get them done. You won't get full credit, but you will get most of the credit. So I would just strongly encourage you to be sure and get that done and get those posts in. Posts, as we discussed before, along with the daily checkpoints between discussion board posts and checkpoints, those are by far the easiest ways to get points in a class like this, right? But, it takes a little bit of discipline to stay on top of it. So this week, make sure you get caught up, stay on top of your checkpoints, but also get those discussion board comments in if needed if you find yourself missing any of them from previous weeks. Get them in, get them done. This week, excuse me, there's not a discussion board. Excuse me. There's not a discussion board, but there is the 15-point course evaluation, basically. So this is different than the anonymous course evaluation where you can give the real, feedback, right? This is where we're trying to get constructive help regarding the class, regarding me, regarding the text, okay? And so that's graded. That gives you 15 points. A very easy way to get 15 points, though. So I'd strongly encourage you to accomplish that 15-point, basically little discussion board or assessment, however you want to look at it. Okay, but the main thing, of course, this week is 165 points of value in the final exam. And as I mentioned before, we'll spend a good chunk of time at the end tonight going over the topics that you'll need to know for the exam. So we won't cover more of that right now, but just give you a heads up that that's coming. So based on what you've done to this point, Melanie, any questions about grading, any questions about assignments, assessments, discussion boards that we've accomplished to this point? Since you're here, do you feel like you're in pretty good shape? I mean, you may not want to air it out, during a recorded session, but do you have any concerns at this point about the class, or do you feel pretty comfortable to this point? Well, thank you. So if you do think of any questions or concerns, just send me a quick email this week. Get in touch with the learning coach. Whatever we need to do to make sure that you wrap up the class strong. Like I say, there's a handful of you that are finding yourself kind of behind on the work at this point, and as I mentioned before, I think I have this suspicion that a lot of you that are behind, it's just because there were some assignments that you felt like were a little bit complex or too complicated, and so maybe it's something that you'll go back to and review later, and make sure and put in the time to review, as I mentioned, the sessions where we really spent a lot of time talking about them, those assignments, and maybe the book, right? We were supposed to read the chapter anyway, but maybe we'll go back to the book and review that information as well. So, all right, so let's look at Chapter 17 now. Chapter 17, as I mentioned before, is a little bit more about employee benefits. Last week, we talked about employee benefits, right, in terms of group insurances primarily, life insurance, health insurance, different benefits like group disability insurance. I think the book even mentioned long-term care insurance, group long-term care, cafeteria plans, those types of things. This week, we're going to focus more on retirement, the retirement planning aspect of group benefits, which is a significant part of group benefits as well. And before I do that, I guess I always like to mention, and I don't know I have in this class yet, the fact that as you get your degree and as you're evaluating different companies that you would like to work for, some of us will just say, well, any company that gives me, a good amount of pay, that's who I'm going to work for. And I would just pause a little bit about that comment, and I would make sure that you feel comfortable that whoever you're going to work for also has benefits that are acceptable as well, right? Don't just stop at the hourly pay or the annual pay or the monthly pay. Go beyond that and look into the benefits as well, because if they have a pension, or if they have a 401k and a pension and a profit share, if they have significant bonuses, if they have significant retirement planning or other benefits, that could be a deciding factor from one job to another. It's not all about just getting an extra dollar per hour at some point, right? I realize that's important, but it's not all about that at some point. At some point, you've got to look to the other benefits associated with that work or that potential job as well. Okay, and I think that's pretty intuitive. Most people understand that, but I always get confused when I talk to somebody or perplexed when I talk to somebody and they talk about two different job opportunities, and the only difference that they're looking at is a difference of maybe 50 cents per hour or something like that. And I think, well, if all the benefits are exactly the same, then you should just look at pay. But more than likely, the benefits are probably different, right? Most companies don't have identical benefits from one to the next. And so you'd want to make sure that the benefits make sense from one company to another before you just make a decision solely based on income. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, but just something that I like to remind classes about when we get to this point. So you can see there's a list of different things that we could cover tonight as far as retirement planning. One of the things that defines retirement planning are some different legislative actions that have happened in the past regarding setting up retirement plans as a special opportunity for people to get um, very tax efficient retirement planning done. And what does that mean? It just means that these types of plans that that government has enacted over history allow you and I to save for retirement either inside of a workplace, right, with like a 401k or pension, or even outside of a workplace with an individual IRA, Roth IRA, traditional IRA, some type of IRA product. But within or without our employment situation, we can accomplish retirement planning preparation in a very tax efficient way because of these laws that were enacted historically. And a lot of these laws really help us to get to a point where we can retire, right? They allow our money to grow tax deferred. They give us tax deductions for putting in. So they give us some very nice benefits. Now with those benefits comes some restrictions, right? And rules. And we'll talk a little bit about those restrictions and rules tonight. But I just wanted to mention the fact that where this comes from is Congress at different times through history saying, you know what, we need to try to help middle class America. And that's primarily what all these rules, what it comes down to with these rules. They're trying to help middle class America accomplish retirement, right? Knowing that Social Security is probably not going to be enough, that we're probably all going to need more than Social Security to live on, when we get to retirement because of the rising cost of healthcare, because of the rising cost of everything, right? That we'll probably need more than just Social Security. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some specifics. But first of all, just at its core, I talked about the tax benefits. Deferral, having tax deferral, which all qualified retirement plans offer, okay, 401ks, traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, SEP IRAs, simple IRAs, all these different types of plans, and we'll talk about a few of them in more specifically here in just a little while, but all of these plans allow for tax deferral. And when you compare tax deferral versus non-deferral, and what do I mean by that? Deferral just means I don't have to pay taxes as I go. So as the money grows, I don't have to pay any taxes if it's tax deferred. If it's not tax deferred, I just open a brokerage account and invest in some mutual funds. I'm going to have to pay taxes as I go. There are going to be capital gains and income that come from those mutual funds. Even if I don't sell them, there's going to be distributions that I have to pay taxes on along the way. So just as a general rule, and this is an oversimplification on this bar chart, but the concept is correct, which is if you go 20, 30, 40 years with tax deferral, the gap between a tax deferred account and how much it can grow by and a non-tax deferred account is pretty substantial. So you go out to that point, excuse me, where you save for 40 years, and the difference when you save for 40 years in a tax deferred account versus a non-tax deferred account by in terms of this chart is almost $100,000 difference, right? Significant difference between those. So tax deferral is a good thing from a tax planning standpoint. Retirement plans are not the only place you can get tax deferral. You can get tax deferral in home equity, like buying real estate. You can get tax deferral through an annuity. Talked about annuities. You can get tax deferral through insurance. So there's lots of other ways to get tax deferral, but IRAs and different qualified retirement accounts are a significant opportunity, when it comes to getting deferral, okay, among other things that you could do. So qualified retirement plans basically have to be tested, and I'm not going to go into the rules of the different testing, but the bottom line is qualified retirement plans like 401ks have to allow everybody to participate. If they don't, then they're not going to receive their qualification status, okay? So what that means is if your plan doesn't offer, so if I have a 401k and I'm General Electric or GE, and I say, well, I don't want some of my employees to have the 401k because it costs me money and I don't want low-end employees to have it, but I do want my mid-level employees to have it. There are rules that basically say you can't do that, right? If you have a 401k for all eligible people, then no matter who they are, no matter where they work, they have to be able to participate in the 401k, and you have to provide it for them if you're providing it for others. Okay, so they try to make it equitable, they try to make it available, but there are some things that they can set up to screen people out. One is they can say people under 21 can't participate in the 401k. That's an available rule. Doesn't have to be that way, but they can say that. They can also say, and the slide states this, that they have to complete at least a year of employment before they're eligible to do the 401k. Now, most companies don't do this, but this is, again, something that a company could do if they wanted to within the rules. Another thing that they could say is they could say if you don't work full time, okay, you don't participate in the retirement plan. And Melanie, I don't know if you've ever had a retirement plan available to you, but it's pretty common nowadays that if you work for a company that has a 401k, they will not give it to you if you don't work full time. There are a few exceptions to that, but most companies you have to work full time in order to get the retirement benefit. And most companies start eligibility right away, either in the first month or the third month. I haven't come across many companies that wait a whole year, and most companies allow you to start when you're 18. I haven't come across a lot of companies that make you wait till you're 21. So even though those are the rules and those rules are available to companies to put out there, I haven't come across those nearly as much. Melanie, I don't know if you want to say or not, but have you ever had a retirement plan available to you? Okay. So when you do, like I say, be aware you might have to be 21, you might have to be full-time, and you might have to work there for a year. But those are kind of worst case scenarios, right? Some places you only have to be 18, they start immediately, and you don't even have to be full-time. But it just depends one employer to the next. And if you want to seem or come across competent and intelligent in an interview, one of the things that, after you get through what they want to know about you and they say, hey, do you have any questions? They usually say that at the very end. One of the things that would seem, I think, impressive if I was a hiring manager is if you could speak fairly competently about things like retirement, right? So could you explain, your retirement benefits that I understand them? And a hiring manager is going to be able to explain, hey, we have a 401k, you have to be 21 to participate, you have to work full time to participate, but it's a great plan because it matches 4% when you put in 5%, right? So in essence, you're getting free money. When you put in 5% of your money for retirement, we're going to match it and put in 4%, and you're going to get that from us without having to do anything, right, other than just participate. So that's something that a hiring manager could explain to you. And the difference between a company who has a matching plan where they'll match 4% on 5, for example, that's just one example, versus a company that doesn't give you any, free money as far as a matching program or any kind of 401k is pretty substantial. That's a 4% increase in your pay just by the fact that they have a matching 401k plan. Okay. So something to consider, something to ask about. Maybe not in the first interview, but when you get second, third, fourth interview potentially with a future employer, something to ask them about is the 401k plan or their retirement plan options. Okay. So we have two different main types of retirement plans within businesses. One's considered a defined contribution plan, and the other's called a defined benefit plan. If I were to chart out the popularity of each type of plan, defined benefit plans or the traditional pension plan was very common and popular back in the day. So our parents and grandparents commonly had pension plans. They'd work for the same employer forever, and then they'd have a pension plan when they retired. Nowadays, it's highly common, okay, to have a 401k, which is a defined contribution plan, but it's highly uncommon to have those traditional defined benefit plans or pension plans. What are the main differences between the two? Defined contribution plan puts the risk and investment and choices and contribution on your shoulders. Okay. Defined benefit plan puts the risk and contributions on the shoulders of the employer. So over the last 50 years, there's been a significant shift away from employers wanting to have a defined benefit plan and take on all the risk and responsibility of having a defined benefit plan. And they've been offloading that risk and responsibility onto you and I as employees in the form of 401ks and defined contribution plans. Okay. So that's the shift that's been going on over the past 20, 30 years. And like I say, if you still work for a company that has a pension plan in addition to maybe a 401k and pays you a percentage of your ending income when you retire, that's very uncommon and it's very lucrative. It's a very rich, what we'd call a very rich benefit that's very uncommon now. Okay. The only places that still have significant pension plans that I see very commonly are colleges, okay, government jobs, military, and education. Okay, so basically anything government related might have a pension, might not, but many of them still have pensions. And then some large banks, some large companies still have pension plans, but most do not. Okay, so just a heads up. So those are defined benefit plans, those traditional pension plans of yesteryear. And then 401ks, which are the most common plan type now for retirement, those are defined contribution plans. Okay. All right, so those are the two main plan types. Then we've got a situation we call vesting. Vesting just means that you may have to work for a certain amount of time for a company before their contribution, their allotment to your retirement becomes yours. And I know this sounds kind of crazy, but it makes sense from an employer standpoint when I explain it. These plans are very costly to run for an employer. So what they do is they say, okay, we're going to match you, let's say 4% on 5%. You put in 5%, we're going to put in 4%, and that's just free money we're going to throw into your 401k for you in a regular 401k. But they might say, but if you leave us in the first year or two, we're not going to give you our part of the money. Okay, you'll always have your part, whatever part you put in, but our part, the matching part, we're not going to necessarily give you unless you fulfill what's called a vesting period. And that might be a few years. It might be cliff vesting after 5 years. It might not be 100% vested until you get to 7 years. Okay, but it's graded vesting over time. You get a certain amount of it vested in that becomes your money over time. But this drives people crazy because if you don't understand vesting, you're going to have a statement on your 401k that shows you that you have, let's say, $25,000 in your 401k, and you quit. You go to another employer and you say, okay, I want to roll my 401k into my new employer. Well, that's fine. You can do that. But when you go back to your old employer, you might find out that that $25,000 wasn't fully vested. What does that mean? It just means that a portion of it, the portion that they were giving you, the company was, not the portion you put in, but the portion they put in, wasn't fully vested. And so you don't get all your money. And you will never get all your money unless you go back to work for them and they have a program where they can reinstate and continue your vesting process. So if you think you might go back to work for them, just hang tight and see if that happens. If you're definitely never going to go back and work for them, then you're just not ever going to get that money that was invested. And that's just how it is. Okay, so something to be very aware of when it comes to 401ks and pensions is that they probably have a vesting period. And the point is these plans are very costly for a company to run, and it's also very costly to hire people. The whole point of these plans, if companies were altruistic, they would be doing it right for our benefit, but that's not why companies do it. Companies do 401k and retirement plans so that they can retain and attract good employees. Okay. If the purpose is to retain and attract good employees, then the vesting period makes a lot of sense, right? Because it's their way of basically saying, hey, if we're going to spend all the money to hire you and we're going to give you free money in a 401k or pension, and gift you that money basically for working for us, if you decide to leave after 6 months or a year or even a year and a half, just after a short period, then we're going to take some of that back. You're not going to get it all. Okay, so it sounds pretty brutal, but it makes sense when you think about it in terms of the employer and the costs associated with hiring people, which are very high. And the whole point of the retirement plan, which is not just to be friendly and nice to employees, although I would guess that there are some CEOs out there that's the reason they did it, but mostly CEOs do it, mostly companies do it in order to retain and attract good employees, right? So if part of the purpose is to retain them, that's why they have this vesting schedule. But it's something to be aware of because you don't want to leave a company thinking that you can take your whole retirement plan and then find out and be surprised by the fact that you don't get to take your whole thing. One other thing that slide said that's important is that if you take your money out before 59 and a half from a 401k or any kind of qualified retirement plan, there is a 10% early distribution penalty. So if you have a regular 401k, right, through an employer and you quit, and let's say there's $20,000 in there and you think, well, I need the $20,000 because I need to, I need that money when I'm not working, which happened a lot back in 2008 and 2009, right? During the recession, a lot of people lost their jobs and then they didn't have another job. And so they were, basically trying to get by on almost nothing. So a lot of people went to their 401ks and said, hey, how can I get my money out? And if I was an administrator on your 401k, if I was part of your HR department, I'd say, yeah, that's your money. We can take it out. But know that if you're under 59 and a half, you're going to pay a 10% early distribution penalty, right? And you're also going to pay taxes on it. Okay, so it's a double whammy, right? You're going to pay 10% penalty, and then you're going to also pay taxes. Taxes could be anywhere from 15, 20, 30%. And then on top of that, you have a 10% penalty. So you'll probably lose about 30% of your money by taking it out early from your 401k. Government has these programs not so that you can use it like a piggy bank or a savings account, but so that you'll use it for retirement, right? And the only way that they can try to encourage us to use it for retirement is to penalize us for not using it for retirement, okay? So they give us benefits but to do it, but they also penalize us if we don't use it for the reason that it's intended, okay? Any questions about that, Melanie? Or you know, some people hear that and they just think, wow, these are tough rules, or this is really hard, or this is really bad. It's not that 401ks and IRAs are wonderful from a tax planning standpoint, but they're by design kind of inflexible before you get to retirement, because government doesn't want us to use it before retirement. The whole point of these plans is to have them when we get to retirement, right? So that's why there's great benefits to keep the account together and to not use the funds until we get to retirement. Okay, so let's keep going. In a regular IRA or 401k, government will force you to take a distribution out at 70 and a half. So some people get to retirement, and between a pension and Social Security, they don't need, or they keep working, right? And they don't need money from their IRAs. Well, one of the rules about regular IRAs is that if you turn age 70 and a half, you have to start taking money from them. And they actually force you to take money every year. And it starts at about 4 1/3% that first year. So it's not a lot, but it goes up a little bit each year. And the whole point is they're doing a calculation and trying to determine before you get to your mortality, which is 83, 87, something like that, they want you, or average mortality, I should say, they want you to have pulled out your money so that they can get their tax revenue on it, right? Because it was never taxed when you put it in, it was always tax deferred. But when you pull it out of a regular IRA or regular 401k, it's 100% taxable at that point. And that doesn't mean that you owe 100% tax. That just means that it's like income that then has taxes assessed on it, right? Okay. Integration with Social Security is very uncommon, so I'm not going to go over that. You've got different types of qualified plans. We're not going to go over in much detail all the different qualified plans, although we talked about how defined benefit plans and defined contribution plans are different. One quick thing, there's a pension guarantee corporation that's kind of like FDIC for banks, but it's a guarantee corporation for pensions, but it only protects up to a certain amount, right? And so if you have a pension that's supposed to pay you $10,000 a year, and then the company that you work for goes bankrupt, like some of the airlines did, you're not going to get your pension. What you might get is the guarantee amount through the PBGC, okay, this Guarantee Association. So there's a little bit of protection there, but really your pension's about as good as the company that stands behind it, right? So if you work for a company that promises a good pension but then goes bankrupt, that doesn't mean anything to you, other than you might get a little bit of this pension guarantee insurance, basically. Defined contribution plans, 401ks, are the most common, as we've described. Most 401ks have some kind of matching program, okay? And they have to be tested to make sure that they're not just benefiting the highly compensated or just a few people at a company, as opposed to being available and accessible to the entire company, right? That's the point, is that everybody should have that benefit available to them. Okay. All right, let's keep going here. Some rule changes. You've got plan like a 403B, which is only available if you work for a not-for-profit entity. Okay, it allows you to get a little bit more money in. Got profit sharing plans, KEO plans like simple IRAs and SEP IRAs. Then you've got individual 401ks for people who are self-employed. Basically, the point of the last two slides is to make the point, look, even if you don't work for a company but you have your own small business, the government has come out with a lot of plans, a lot of plan types for you to be able to make your own plan, basically. and have all the same benefits that you would if you worked for somebody else. The only difference is the only person looking after that plan is you, right? Nobody's going to put free money into it like you get if you work for somebody else and they profit share or match. But you still can put together a plan, get a lot of money into your retirement plan on a tax deferred and tax deductible basis, even if you're self-employed, don't even work for somebody else. Okay, so those options are there as well. SEPs are good, simple IRAs are good. Those are different types of plans. And I think that's what I want to cover as far as employee retirement and benefit plans. Okay. All right. One just quick little pitch as I transition to what's going to be on the test this week. As I mentioned before, the difference between an employer that has a plan and doesn't is significant. And a difference between two employers, one, they both have a plan and one of them is just much more rich. As I mentioned before, a way to describe a plan that just has a lot of good benefits that you can take off the plan, that's significant. I just highly encourage you to look at retirement planning and retirement benefits when you are trying to determine one employer to the next, which one you should decide to do. But perhaps more importantly than that, the likelihood of you having a 401k at some point in your working life is very high, right? Because as I mentioned before, the popularity of 401ks is significant now. Almost every major employer has a 401k available. So if you go work for Walmart, you have a 401k. If you go work for McDonald's and you manage, you're full-time, you probably have a retirement plan available to you. No matter, you name the big company, if you go work for them and you work full-time, you're probably going to have a 401k. And a lot of companies, even if you work part-time, you'll have a 401k available to you, right? So a lot of business in the healthcare world, a lot of the nurses and healthcare professionals that I know and are familiar with, a lot of their companies that they work for, they can work part-time and still get retirement benefits, right? Because it's such a competitive marketplace for healthcare professionals that they get those. So the point is, you'll probably have a 401k. The follow-up that I was going to say is that I often have two things that I come across as a financial advisor. One is somebody has a 401k but doesn't participate, and their comment to me is they don't understand investing, so they don't want to do the 401k plan. And what I tell everyone, every person that tells me that, I say, look, you got two options. You can either meet with somebody like me and I can help you get allocated and help you feel comfortable and explain everything you need or want to know about your 401k plan so that you'll get comfortable and do it. That's one option. And some people will still say, I just don't want to put the effort into that. I just am intimidated by it. I don't want to have somebody explain it to me. I just don't want to do it. And then I'll say, okay, then you need to do the second option, which the second option is within every 401k, there's an option to do a money market or guaranteed contract account. And what that means is you don't have to understand investing. You don't have to even be comfortable with investing. You might hate investing. You might not have any confidence at all in the market, right? Or in stocks or in mutual funds. But you can still participate in your 401k because there's always a non-market, non-investment option within every single 401k that basically works like a savings account. And if you'll just ask your HR person, they'll be able to point you, to that particular option. If you were to accomplish that option, okay, and it acts like a savings account, you would still be eligible for the free money that your company offers, whether or not that's 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, could even be as much as 6 or 7% I've seen with different 401k plans. But the most common is a 3% match. If you put in 3%, they put in 3%, okay? So what does that really mean? Well, if I make $50,000 a year and they're going to give me a 3% match and I put 3% of my money, 3% of my salary in, what does that mean, right? What are the real numbers? The real numbers, what it means is this. If I put $1,500 a month in, or excuse me, $1,500 a year, okay? Remember I said we make $50,000 a year? So if I put 3% of my salary at $1,500, which is just over $100 a month, so about $120 a month into my 401k plan each month. The company, if they have a 3% match, will put in $120+ a month as well. Okay? Free money, right? I didn't have to do anything for that match other than participate in a retirement plan that I should be participating in anyways. So I'm getting 100% return on my investment, right? 100% return guaranteed on my investment by putting my $125 in. They put $125 in for me, and each month $250 goes into my 401k account. And like I said before, it could just be going into cash, right? So I don't have to take risk with it if I don't want to. I would encourage people to take risk if they've got a long time horizon, but only if they feel comfortable doing that. Okay. And what I try to do for my living, for my job, is to help people get more comfortable with taking risk. And because over a 20 or 30-year period of time, that risk will pay them and pay them significantly. So anyway, the point is, what I'm trying to get at is, if you have a 401k available to you, don't fall in the camp of, I don't understand it, I don't want to do it, I don't want the risk of that, because you're giving up a lot of free money. It's kind of a silly decision not to participate in a 401k, because that's free money sitting there ready for you. The company's willing to give you, and you're saying no, right? We would never do that in any other circumstance, but for some reason, a lot of people do that with their retirement plans. And I shouldn't say for some reason. A lot of times they don't do the 401k because they're scared or they're uncomfortable with investing, right? And as I just mentioned to you, there's always an option within a 401k plan where you don't have to invest the money. You don't have to put it in the market. It doesn't have to be volatile or risky. It can be guaranteed. It can be very safe. And then you're just getting free money, 100% returns for safe money, which you can't even get 100% return on high risk investment, let alone safe ones, right? Safe ones don't pay you hardly anything. A 401k with a match can pay you significantly. Okay, that's my little rant. That's my soapbox for 401ks. Any questions, Melanie, before we transition to the test? You've been quiet. You're probably following the election, right? If I were you, I would be. It's a busy night with election information tonight. All right, so let's look at the test. As I mentioned to you before, there's 165 points available. There are 45 multiple choice and true and false questions on the test, of which many are repeat questions, questions that you've probably seen before, this point. So there will be some new information from Chapter 17 based on the information we covered within the slides and that are in the ebook. But primarily, it's review information on these 45 questions. So number one on the test is a repeat question about health insurance on determining how much the insurer or the insured should have to pay on a bill, right? So somebody gets in an accident, there's a bill, there's an out-of-pocket maximum, there's a calendar year deductible, and there's co-insurance, and then it asks us how much will the insurance company or how much will the insured, the person who's insured, have to pay, okay? Melanie, should we do an example problem for that, or do you feel comfortable that you can calculate the health insurance, one of the health insurance problems, okay? Because I'd be happy to give an example, but I don't want to do it if you feel like you're doing okay on health insurance math. Okay, good. So number one on the test is that. Number two on the test is also a health insurance math problem. Number one, well, I shouldn't say this because I'm not 100% positive that they're repeat questions, but I think both of them are repeat questions from last week. Okay, so if you felt comfortable last week, you'll be okay this week. Just remember that we need to be careful that we remember who they're asking about, right? So it's easy sometimes for us to assume that they want to know how much the person has to pay, right? But sometimes they're asking not what the person has to pay, but what the insurance company has to pay for a particular claim or situation. Okay, so those are the first two questions. Yep, insurer or insured, exactly. You're on top of it, Melanie. Okay, number three on the test is a question about health insurance again, and asking you to basically understand what a point of service or POS plan is. Okay, what is a POS plan? How does it work? Remember, we talked about HMOs and different types of plans. We also talked about point of service plans. and kind of how they worked last week. And you'll want to just basically have a basic understanding of point of service plans, and you'll get number 3 right on the test. Number 4 on the test. Okay, number 4 on the test is asking about high deductible plans. So just review in the book from last week what the book has to say about high deductible health insurance plans, the pros and cons of high deductible health insurance. Okay. Number 5 on the test. Number 5 on the test, when we talk about health insurance and we talk about health insurance being able to be continued after you're done, there's a term for that. Okay. There's a term for that. And you'll want to know what that term is before you get to the test for number 5. What is the term that describes being able to keep your health insurance after you leave your company? Okay. What does that mean? What is it called? Number 6 on the test. Number 6 on the test goes back to our discussion about the different approaches to how much life insurance we should get. You'll recall that there's a needs-based approach, a human life value approach, and a capital retention approach. And this is going back, I think, to week 1. So this might be really far back in the memory, right? That's a while ago. But you'll want to just review basically the difference between those 3, kind of the advantages and disadvantages, and how each one of them is calculated. Not that you're going to have to calculate it, right? Because we're not talking about the cost of insurance. We're talking about how you determine how much life insurance to get. The human life value approach, right, was how much value is there to you working over your working lifetime. Okay, that's the human life value approach. The capital retention approach is how much money do I have to sit in the bank at a reasonable rate of interest to basically recreate the value to me, the amount of money I need each month to replace if you were to pass away. And the needs-based approach is you go specifically in a case-by-case situation. You talk about paying off debts, paying for funeral costs, paying for replacement income, and you go through and try to determine really specifically how much in this particular situation they need if someone were to pass away from a tragic event. Okay, so those are in a nutshell the 3 different types. Capital retention approach is usually the one that requires the most insurance, right? Needs-based approach is the most specific to a person's situation, okay, because you're going through all the different needs that might be there. And human life value approach is an approach that a lot of insurance people use because it makes sense to people to replace the income lost if somebody passes away. And for all intents and purposes, that's how the insurance companies determine how much insurance you can even get. Right? Life insurance companies can actually cap how much life insurance you can get. And the reason they do that, or the way that they do that, is they come up with how much your life is worth. Basically, they try to put a price tag on your life. And most of that price tag comes from your ability to make money. Okay? If you still are young and can make a lot of money over your lifetime, then according to an insurance company, you have a significant human life value. And I know this sounds really crass and rude, but that's how insurance companies have to look at people, right? They have to look at them as dollar signs and put a value on it, assign a certain value on them, or they shouldn't be in the business of life insurance. You have to do that as an insurance company. Okay? So number 6 is a question about one of those methods, the human life value approach specifically. So you want to know the basics of that. Number 7 is one about the needs-based approach to life insurance, kind of the basics of that. So that'd be number 7. Number 8, okay, you've got terminology. You'll want to understand the terminology sandwiched family and blended family for number 8 on the test. Okay, what is the difference between a blended family and a sandwiched family? Okay, what are those? If you already know, you'll be in great shape. If you don't, just go back and review what a sandwiched family or a blended family is so that you can get that right on the test. Number 9 on the test, you want to know about life insurance provisions. There's renewal provisions, grace periods, free look periods, and conversion provisions. Okay. All these are contract features on life insurance, and you'll want to know before you get to the test for number 9 what those basic features do. Okay. Number 10 on the test just is asking you what the book has to say about the economic problem of premature death. Okay. That's just a flowery way of saying when people die, what kind of drain on the economy is there? What does the book have to say about that? Don't look it up on Google. Actually go back to the textbook and see what the textbook has to say about the economic drain from premature death in the United States. Okay, what does the book have to say about that? Number 11 on the test asks you about how you assign ownership of life insurance. What does it mean? How do you do it? Well, when we assign life insurance ownership, we actually transition or transfer ownership from one person to another, right? The only person who can do it is the current owner, but that current owner has the right to transfer ownership of the insurance to a charity or to another person. And there's absolute assignment, which means that there's no retention of any kind of rights once that assignment is done. Anyway, just you want to know the basics of assignment before you get to the test when it comes to life insurance. Number 12 on the test is another contract feature of life insurance called guaranteed purchase, a guaranteed purchase option. You want to understand basically what that was. That would be something that you learned in the homework if you did the homework. Guaranteed purchase is one of the homework questions. So just make sure you understand that provision before you get to the test. Number 13 on the test. Number 13 on the test has to do with life insurance proceeds and trustees. Okay. What does the book have to say about life insurance proceeds, meaning payouts from life insurance, and trustees? Okay, so basically, what are the rules associated with the trustee handling life insurance proceeds from a death benefit? Number 14 on the test is another assignment question. So we talked about assignment when it comes to life insurance. That means transfer of ownership. Number 19 is a COLA rider, which is a cost of living adjustment rider. Make sure you understand what that is and where does it derive its adjustment. So when we say a life insurance policy has a cost of living adjustment rider, that means that it increases over time based on inflation. But how do they come up with the number that they adjust those by? The book tells you, and you'll want to know the answer to that question before you get to the test. Number 16 on the test. Number 16 on the test basically asks you what the book has to say about what you should do when you're deciding about buying life insurance. Okay, what are the steps to deciding and going through the process of deciding what life insurance to buy? Okay, the book actually walks you through some different steps and gives you some specific advice on what to do when buying life insurance. Number 17 on the test, you want to understand the 3 approaches that we talked about. This was the week 2 assignment that was pretty tough when it comes to the math. The 3 different ways that we can calculate the cost of insurance. There was the surrender cost method, the traditional net cost method, and the net payment cost method. Okay, what are the differences between those 2? If you know the basics, the differences between those 3, then you'll get number 17 on the test right. Number 18 on the test, another question about shopping for life insurance, what the book has to say about going out in the marketplace to get a life insurance policy. Number 19, net single premium. Okay, net single premium, what does that mean when it comes to insurance? Net single premium, or NSP, which is an acronym, by the way, that in the business we hardly ever use, but that's something that the book used. So just see what the book has to say about net single premium. Excuse me. All right. Number 20 on the test is a question about the net payment cost method versus the surrender cost method versus the traditional net cost method. That's a mouthful, but the bottom line is those three different ways to find out the actual cost of life insurance, cash value life insurance specifically. And just make sure you know the basic differences between those two, and you'll have another one right on the test. Number 21 on the test asks about IRAs, rules of IRAs. So you want to understand the basic rules. We talked about how you'll get penalized if you take money out of an IRA before 59.5. We talked about how they force you to take distributions after 70.5. We talked about how they're tax deferred, tax deductible, which is nice, but how they come out completely income taxable when you finally take them out. Okay, so those are some basics of IRAs, regular traditional IRAs. And so when you get to the test, just make sure you understand the basic rules of a traditional IRA. Then number 22 on the test flips it over to Roth IRAs. You want to know the basics of Roth IRAs. How do they work? Okay. Roth IRAs have some of the same rules, but then they have some different rules than traditional IRAs. Roth IRAs, if you take out the growth before 59.5, you're also penalized, just like you are on a traditional IRA. However, Roth IRAs don't force you to take money out at 70.5, okay? But as far as contribution maximums and things like that, they're exactly the same. So the tax, there's big tax differences between a regular IRA, a traditional IRA, and a Roth IRA. You'll want to just make sure you understand the basics of that before you get to number 22 on the test. You get that one right. Number 23 on the test, joint and survivor annuities. You'll just want to understand the payout options of annuities and what a joint and survivor annuity is. Okay, what does that even mean? What is a joint and survivor annuity? Number 24 on the test, you want to understand on an annuity how to calculate the exclusion ratio. I think this is a repeat question. Seems like there was an exclusion ratio question on the test when we learned about annuities, I think in week 2. Might have been week 2, week 3, I don't know. Anyway, one of those weeks we learned about annuities and we learned about how to calculate the exclusion ratio. I think we were tested on it that week. This one just gives you a really simple, it's not hard math. You just need to know how to type, you just need to know how to plug in the different inputs for calculating an exclusion ratio, and you'll be just fine on number 24 on the test. So how do you calculate the exclusion ratio? Number 25 asks about annuity settlement options. How do you come up with the different settlement options when it comes to annuities? What does it even mean? Settlement options are just how, when somebody dies, or excuse me, when you're going to take the payment over time, you're going to settle out the benefit associated with the annuity. And so just make sure you understand how you can do that when it comes to annuities. Okay. Number 26 on the test, a little bit about long-term care insurance. Just what does the book basically have to say about long-term care insurance? Very brief segment on long-term care insurance. Just read up on it and you'll get that problem right on the test. 27 on the test is about HSAs. Make sure you understand about the tax treatment of HSAs, health savings accounts. What does the book have to say about HSAs? Number 28 on the test, make sure you understand the basic provisions of health insurance, individual health insurance. So remember, individual health insurance also has grace periods, reinstatement, has, guaranteed renewable situation, has features just like life insurance has different contract features, right? Just refresh your memory on health insurance contract features, and you'll be in good shape for number 28 on the test. 29 on the test, long-term care insurance again, basics of long-term care insurance. 29 on the test, long-term care insurance, I think I just mentioned that. Number 30 on the test, co-insurance. What is the reason that health insurance companies have co-insurance? What is the purpose of co-insurance on health insurance? Okay, if you understand what the book has to say about that, you'll get number 30 right. Number 31 is make sure you understand those limited health insurance policies, like the different AFLAC contracts is what I called them last week when we talked about it. But understand what those limited health insurance companies are, what kind of purposes they can serve, and you'll get number 31 on the test right. Number 32 on the test, just make sure you understand the terms associated with an HMO. Okay, basic terms associated with an HMO, what the book has to say about that. 33, cafeteria plans, basics of cafeteria plans. Number 34 talks about why some employers will self-insure. Why do they self-insure? And just know what the book has to say about employers, companies, and self-insurance. Okay. Number 35, HMO question again, so you should be in good shape there if you understand HMOs. Number 36, you want to understand a little bit about supplemental group major medical policies. Supplemental major group major medical policies, that's a mouthful. What does the book have to say about why companies would use advantages, disadvantages of a supplemental group major medical insurance plan? Another health insurance, group health insurance, just basics of group health insurance question on 37. Number 38, again, a cafeteria plan question. How a cafeteria plan works. Should have learned a little bit about cafeteria plans last week. It was on the assignment, but some of you missed that on the assignment. that the book was really trying to get you to go down that road when it asked the question, how do we have a very flexible benefit that offers many different benefits that employees can choose from? The point of that question is we offer as an employer a cafeteria plan, because then employees can go in and kind of choose their own set of benefits from that cafeteria plan instead of just being subject to all the ones that we offer. $39 is a profit sharing question. So profit sharing plans, that was from chapter 17. That's from the material in chapter 17. Basics of profit sharing, basics of KEOGH plans, KEOGH. So we didn't really go over KEOGH plans, but basically they're for self-employed folks. And you want to understand what those plans are basically to get number 40 right. Number 41, you want to know the difference between basic plans, right? So there are different plans, right? There are defined contribution plans like 401ks and 403bs, and there are traditional pensions that we talked about. But there are also different plans like SEP IRAs, Simplified Employee Pension Plans, or SEPs. There's simples. There's different plans types, and you'll want to know just the basic differences between those before you get the test for number 41. Number 42. Number 42 is the basics of a profit sharing plan. That's all you need to know, and you'll get that one right. Number 43, you want to understand the rules. Remember we talked about how there's testing rules when it comes to qualified retirement plans, and if they don't meet those tests, then they fail as a qualified plan and they can lose their qualified status, which is where we get the tax benefits from on a plan. So what are some of those testing rules? If you know basically what those testing rules are, you'll get number 43 right on the test. Number 44, you want to know what a GIC is, a GIC contract. Okay, it's basically just, we talked about how every 401k has something that's guaranteed that kind of acts like cash. That's what a GIC is. Okay, GIC, guaranteed investment contract within a 401k. Now, not all 401ks have them. Some 401ks just have a money market account. Some of them have a stable value fund. There's all kinds of different things in a 401k that can be that non-market, non-risky thing that I was talking about that everybody has availability to. A GIC is one of those options that could be available. Just want to know basically what a GIC is before you get to the test. It's kind of a weird acronym, huh? But it stands for Guaranteed Investment Contract. Number 45 on the test, you want to understand just the basics on a cash balance pension plan. I didn't go over the specifics because they're not very common in the world. In fact, I rarely see cash balance plans, but find out what the book has to say basically from the chapter on cash balance plans before you get to the test for number 45. Make sure and get that one right. Okay? All right, that is the test. Those are all the topics that will be on the test. It's a lot of material. Some repeat questions, but fairly comprehensive. You know, my suggestion would be have the topics right, jot it down, go back through, read through the chapters, just briefly skim through them, looking for the topics that we just told you tonight would be on the test. And then if you do that, I think you'll be in great shape and be confident that when you get to the test, you'll do well. Melanie, any questions or concerns before we wrap up tonight? Put you right to sleep. Okay. Have a great night. Let me know. Oh, I'll post them tonight. In fact, I'll post them right now or I'll forget. So we'll get them posted tonight and you'll have the slides from this evening ready to go. Anything else? Okay. Have a great night. Thanks for coming, Melanie. Good luck with the course and good luck going forward. I hope things go well for you. And let me know if we can help you out in any way this week. Have a good evening.